be moderating this afternoon session. And this afternoon session will be conducted by Professor Herrman. She is a world-renowned leader in global mental health, and is the immediate past president of the World Psychiatric Association and a past president of the International Association of Women in Mental Health, as well as a specific Ring College of Psychiatrists. She's a psychiatrist and a public health practitioner, and a former research fellow of the Australian National Health and Medical Record Research Council. She's the director of the WHO Collaborative Center in Mental Health in Melbourne, and was formerly served for 1 year as an acting regional advisor in mental health at the WHO Western Pacific Regional Office in Manila. Professor Herrman has led research programs to address the mental health of marginalized groups, including homeless people, prisoners, and young women, and men living in out-of-home care, and is currently an investigator with Indigenous-led programs promoting family, community, and health system support for youth and young parents with experience of complex trauma. Professor Herrman is a consultant to the Guyana Wellbeing Study and a co-chair with Professor Emmanuel Cummins of the Scientific Advisory Committee of Columbia University. University of Guyana Research in Injury and Trauma Training Program, GRIT. So without further ado, I will now hand you over to Professor Herrman, who will take us through this afternoon's proceedings.
Thank you very much, Alicia, for your introduction. Well, thank you all for your patience. I hope maybe if I stand up it will be better. Maybe if I stand. And is that any better? Can you hear what I'm saying? So these young women have a lot to teach us about promoting mental health. I'll come back to them later in this session as well. We recognise Greta Thunberg and New South Wales, Malala New South Wales. So these young women are champions globally as well as in their communities for climate action and for education of young women. These are topics in themselves important to mental health. And I'll come back to one of the final topics I'm intending to address, which is participation, empowerment, community development through those processes, which I think are fundamental to what we're talking about in women's mental health, but also in mental health more generally, as well as development economically and structurally of communities and nations. The second major theme, as well as champions and engagement, is the idea that this needs to be a joint enterprise. We're not a sectional interest. Mental health requires the working together of groups in health and education, urban planning, and family welfare, and all sorts of other sectors as well. So I thought we could begin the discussion by talking about the social determinants of mental health. And in some ways this is very similar to talking about the social determinants of health themselves. People in this audience who happen to, are many of you familiar with social determinants of health that are provided by the World Health Organization and others? Assuming this might be familiar to many people in the room. Is there anyone who'd volunteer and say yes or no? Be familiar with it? It's the people know. We might go through that a little bit because self is important for healthcare in general and equally so for mental health. And it's a concept that was developed about 15, going on 20 years ago now by groups at the World Health Organization building up on earlier work on social medicine. And we'll talk a little bit about social medicine, including the promotion of mental health. So from talking about promoting mental health, we'll talk about social policies and community development. We need both. We need social policies at the broad national level and the international level. And then we need local action. Nothing will happen without local action and that cooperation. And then the particular need for this work in communities, people living in adversity. Adversity might be living in slums, living in rural poverty, living in refugee camps, being displaced more generally, that's belonging to a minority group. If we're thinking about the social determinants of health, these were brought into focus by a report released a few years ago called the Lancet Commission on Global Mental Health. And it was called Global Mental Health and Sustainable Development because the two were seen to go hand in hand. You can't have sustainable development without mental health. You can't have mental health without good sustainable development in a country. And when I say mental health, I say that deliberately. It's not just the opposite of mental ill health. And I'm saying all this being aware that Professor Norman Sartorius is in the audience, who really inspired a lot of us to be thinking about this some years ago. So in this document, the global mental health agenda was really expanded. Up to then, it had been quite a lot of work, important work, on how to improve mental health services, people with psychosis, depression, living in particularly low and middle income countries, scarce resource settings, and showing the way that's very important for us to take in terms of women's mental health as well, and how you can use the resources in the community and allow them to be strengthened with whatever expertise is available. So community workers, primary health workers, all of them supported by whatever mental health specialty resources. So the agenda was expanded from reducing the treatment gap to promoting mental health and reducing the burden of disorders by thinking about prevention as well as the provision of quality care. So it's one thing to provide a big institution where men and women who've been ill for a long time might be taken to be kept away from the rest of the community for their own safety, and some people think for the safety of others. And where it's seen by the community as a symbol of all that is to be avoided in thinking about mental health and mental health. So providing quality care that's community-based and including social care as part of the agenda. So what are these social determinants of mental health? So you can't see the columns here, but application 25 years ago now, more, from Harvard University, led by Professors Leon Eisenberg and Arthur Feynman, on World Mental Health. This was a fundamental publication in the field of mental health. It talked about problems and priorities in low-income countries, countries and really set up the foundation of what people talk about nowadays, syndemics, but in a way this is the same concept, that there is an interaction, a vicious cycle, if you like, between poverty, violence and discrimination. Particularly they were thinking about chaotic neighbourhoods, in slums or typically where there is violence in the community as well as in the homes. So there might be intimate partner violence, there might be child maltreatment, as well as gang violence. Poverty, educationally poor, and there's discrimination. There may be rampant gender discrimination or discrimination between ethnic or other groups. All of those conditions create high risks for mental ill health. One of the highest risks they identified was relative social disadvantage. So if you think of that, that's got a few things bound up in it. They don't mean the difference between living in Calcutta and living in New York, where there's a lot of poverty in one place and different type of poverty in the other, at different ground. It's really, if you're in one place and you can see people living very differently in the same place. I'm aware that nowadays with the widespread social media and television, it's going to be a different way of perceiving relative social disadvantage. People living in these poorer settings can be much more aware of what affluent life is like. These high risks, including violence, poor education, discrimination, relative social disadvantage altogether, create the foundation for poor mental health, but raise the risks for everybody, including those who are vulnerable. But it used to be thought, at least it was 30, 40, 50 years ago, people thought that mental health was a luxury for the rich. That countries with few resources had to work out what to spend their health dollars on. Mental health is not a priority. In fact, it's the poorer populations that have highest risk and also the lowest chance of recovering productively. One of the key messages in this area too is that mental ill health is just as treatable as any other form of ill health. But we have effective treatments, as in any other form of health. About 1/3 of the people recover straight away, 1/3 might get ill again, and 1/3 have recurrent illnesses. But of course, those people who write the textbooks, who are in the health system, see the ones that don't recover. So this fundamental bias is still not overcome in understanding the cause of mental health and the disadvantages of disabilities in those. So many people in the community have had experience of mental ill health. They often don't speak about it. Most families have someone they know of in the immediate or more distant family. And many of them might recover, some might be ill from time to time. Some might have been sent away. So these high risks for someone who's unwell is less likely to hold employment or to do well in what they're doing. They have good relationships. And these again add to the possibilities of poverty, violence and discrimination. We add in substance abuse to other forms of mental ill health. You can see how the syndemic idea comes together. This idea that many things come together to create greater impact than all of them added together. So how do you break that cycle? Now, we may think, well, here we are, we're at a conference on mental health. How do we as mental health professionals or workers in other forms of similar activity, often working with individuals, we can't solve the problems of poverty. But so let's come back to that. So the determinants, if you like, the determinants of mental ill health are these ones. And a colleague of a number of us, Professor Sir David Goldberg gave this list about 25 years ago. I think it's wonderfully simple and wraps it up. Absolute and relative competence, gender inequality, violence, social exclusion, that importance of social connections, and major physical illness. Those of you clinicians understand that when you encounter someone at the age of, say, 50 or 60 who becomes quite depressed for the first time or apparently so, or develops a psychosis, you look for an underlying cause. It may be the onset of a depression of itself, but otherwise you might look for an emerging cancer, pancreatic or other cancer. You may look for brain tumour, you may look for heart condition. Not from that major physical illness, all those others are social determinants of illness. But part of our role is considering how do we promote mental health by changing those conditions. And we can't do it alone. We need to engage, enroll others in our understanding of what's going to improve mental health. To prevent ill health of various kinds, we can also engage those determinants. And to promote mental health, we can also do other things. How do we, rather than just avoiding social exclusion, how do we promote social connectedness in the community or family or school? I'd like to ask if there's anyone who'd like to make a comment or ask a question now. Because to some of you, this may be areas that you haven't particularly thought about previously. Anyone like to make a comment or what you see in Kiana? What do you think?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kaya. I am a singer, and I have a radio show. It's called School, and I talk a lot about mental health awareness, and I have a lot of listeners from teenager to adults. And just by interacting with them on the show, I realize that they do share similar traumas and what's not. From seeing what we have going on in Guyana with how people react to people and communicate, I want to bring this show to light and just have people into come in and comment and just help persons on the radio that I have this platform to share. And I do it through my music as well. That's what I'm saying. I'm on live at 7.5, Monday to Friday, 7 to 8. So I'm sure everybody here in the common goal, we want to ensure that our country is being more, seeing mental health, is seeing more life.
Well, thank you very much. So that's like the arts and sports are very important in promoting mental health.
Definitely. So I'm trying to do it in true music and true arts.
Thank you. Well, that's a very good example of promoting mental health as well as avoiding ill health.
Definitely. Because a lot of people like music, a lot of like the arts, they listen to me, so
Thank you.
thank you for the question.
Okay, good afternoon. So remember how your topic is women's mental health across their lifetimes. Now this is a more privileged woman question. I feel like time happens to work against like our bodies are time. Like, okay, so when I was reading in obstetrics and gynecology, they said anything past the age of 35 is advanced maternal age, and everyone starts advising you to say prepare like what have babies before that, right? But a lot of times people might not want to do it. People might have other priorities, other wants and needs. However, the expectations, the societal gender expectations of women might pose a very big pressure upon them, and they might feel very stressed about it. Because you have kids, and then you might have a break in your career, and then you go back, and then you're on this is wrong. So that's something to know.
Well, I think thank you, because that's a very important consideration. Perhaps we can come back and think of that later on, because the fact that life, when you think across the life course in many parts of the world, the pressure is on women to have babies very early. Like some of the successes of the health revolution in countries like India has been to have the median age of first pregnancy
Yes.
come above 18. And as you say, in the first world or in educated populations in any country, often the pressure is for women to put off childbearing to complete further education. So these are realities we need to address in life, and how to consider the choices that women make. Many women do not have autonomy.
Yes.
That's one of the social determinants of mental health for women. Having that possibilities to make life choices within the family, or to be listened to have decision-making power outside the family. That's what we've come to talking about. It may sound like jargon, but talking about in participation or empowerment for women. So maybe a hard choice, but at least you are talking about a choice. For most women will probably there's very different choice about when to have babies. Some women there's not a choice about whom to marry or whom to have babies with. So good point. The other thing that women and men are subject to is violence in the home. And I'm going to talk about women because one, it's our topic, and two, because most violence in the home is experienced by women as the men's perpetrator. But the other thing is that women often have sustained more damage or damaging consequences from the violence. But when I say this, I don't want to exclude the fact that men are quite often victims also of violence in the home. Similar thing as well. So violence has been recognised now as a challenge to global health and mental health, particularly to women's mental health. And it might take the form of this in particular type of violence or child maltreatment, all of which may include physical abuse, might include neglect, and the abuse might include sexual abuse. And then you heard mention of the work that is happening in many countries that with indigenous populations where complex trauma is important, and the diagnostic systems in mental health are now recognising traumatic stress disorder, but also the development of depression, psychosis, and other conditions. And that complex trauma is where they sustain sexual violence from which the child or the young person can't escape. And this is a further adversity, much greater adversity, because young families, often young parents, have to deal with this background when they have their own child. Harmful practices against women, including genital mutilation and trafficking of women, and all the things that are happening around the world now. War in many places displaced the populations inside or beyond the cities, so on the movement to the cities. I mean, that's not all bad. Some of the movement in some of the large countries of women out of rural poverty into even quite difficult conditions of work in the cities has resulted in big changes for women's mental health. I wonder if, Christina, you could tell a story of suicide rates among women in China. about women coming out of into the cities and the rates of suicide declining.
In China today, there's a tremendous movement from rural areas to the cities. A lot of it is forced because one of the things China's been doing for the last 8 to 9 years is building these large housing complexes. And the reason for that is they want to get people off of farmland and into the large high rises so that they can use the land for agriculture. So many of the women who are coming off of these agricultural settings, where they had a life and an understanding of what they were doing, they're now in these very large high rises. And because they have absolutely no life, no career, no opportunity to work, which is driving high rates of identified depression. And the question is whether they were depressed before. That we don't know. We also have the other side of the coin where we have people in places like Xinjiang province, and you're pulling a plow for 7 days a week your whole life, and you're now 18 years old, and you've been pulling the plow since you were 12, and you think about what am I going to do for the next year, and you know that you're not going to do anything but pull the plow. And so it contributes to people being, I think as Norman Satori said, there's a real difference between whether you're diagnostically depressed or you're depressed out of the context. But in both cases, they lead to very satisfying lives and increased rates of suicide.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, there's still speculation in this field, but there have been dramatic changes in the pattern of suicide deaths in China, for example, over the last 30 years or so. The Economist magazine wrote a story about this. China was, if we go back 30 years, one of the places in the world where female suicides outnumbered. There was a higher rate than male suicide deaths. The ratio was almost, I think, something like 3 to 3 women died for every 2 men that died.
One of the contradictions of the world suicide is we've always thought, we've talked about it here in Guyana, how many more men commit suicide than women. Some of that is really questionable who gets correctly classified as suicide. But in India and China, where most of the population of the world live, it's actually almost 50-50, men and sex.
Yeah, and 30 years ago, I mean, yes, 30 or 40 years ago, more women than men proportionately died of suicide. Now it's more even. The speculation being that women escaped from oppressive conditions in the countryside and come to the cities. It's still speculating.
Yes, right. I mean, they completely, in the women who managed to escape their tasks, suicide rate went down. Not only suicide rate, but a variety of other criteria as well. It takes, of course, an enormous amount of courage to run away, to be calm in an unknown situation, but many of these change the situation.
So and that's getting away from situations where there's little choice about what to do in life. You have to work on the land or have children relatively early, marry someone that's your family chose. And even if working in the cities is not providing a very rich life, it was at least allowing that woman to make her own decisions. Norman says takes a lot of courage. So the conditions of life and the richer woman's living make a huge difference to the chances of mental ill health or to dying from suicide. And that's what I mean by social determinants. Because the two are interwoven, but people affected in this instance by violence are at risk of mental as well as physical ill health, often both. And there are reasons that we won't go into now, but there are these same sort of interacting causes for that. What makes up a person's own biology, their genes, their physiological processes in their bodies, their minds, how their life experience, and the way their minds work, and the social forces. These all intertwine in a complex way throughout life. And we come back to some of that complex intertwining later on. So think about how powerful are these forces, how much violence is there in the world. It doesn't matter whether you live in USA, Guyana, India or Australia. If you're a woman, you have a fairly high chance of being exposed to violence in the world. So that violence, that chance goes up when you get pregnant. Which is just the opposite of what you would think of in terms of the nurture, genetic nurture. And the overall, the global figure is that around about a third of women worldwide report recent physical or sexual violence from an intimate partner, most often also someone else. And that ranges from quite severe violence to less severe violence, maybe threats, maybe neglect. Nonetheless, it's defined as violence as you receive you. And there are effects at the individual level, at the family level, and at the broader social level. But overall, there's a negative impact that's a moral shame, that this happens to in our communities, failure to protect people who need protection. But it's also an economic loss, and the World Bank has estimated that anywhere up to 4% of global domestic product is lost in some countries. They could fund primary education in some countries for that. It's lost. It's lost through ill health, it's lost through the need for health services, it's lost to the workforces, it's lost to family prosperity. And these, again, it's a paradox to think that someone with a disability, including mental health, would need more protection, but in fact, in general, women with disabilities and girls are at increased risk of violence. They're also at increased risk of more severe consequences, more severe mental health problems. And that violence is not very often at all detected or acted upon. So those of us who are clinicians in a mental health setting in particular, many of the people we see have been subject to violence. It's not often that we ask that question. We don't often ask because it's not easy to ask sometimes, and you often don't know what to do with the answer. But women coming with psychiatric disorders have more frequently than other women been subject to sort of victimization of violence. That's another whole talk in itself, how you deal with that. But there are resources, there's literature, there's experience of how to train mental health workforces, health workforces, social welfare workforces, school teachers and environments, how to talk safely with women about violence at home, and how to develop local networks. And I think one of the things we think about is, any of you have the experience of working in a hospital emergency department, some of us had the occasion to go to your hospital emergency department late one night this week, see how busy it is, and how many people are coming in critically ill with broken legs or with drug intoxication. So how do you find the time and the resource and the personal strength to talk to a woman about how safe she is at home. And what do you do? 5 o'clock on a Friday night, what do you do? Who do you refer to? So these are some of the things that I'm sure are thinking about in Guyana to improve mental health. But some of the most powerful things you should do is have an answer to those questions. You have to train the workforce, develop this networks of safe referrals and answers. And this WHO Commission on Social Determinants of Health was published 15 years ago. And it can be seen from that that although that didn't talk directly about mental health, and they reference to it, that was led by Sir Michael Marmot from the United Kingdom. But over the years since then, he's become an advocate for mental health. People like Jane Fisher and others have convinced him of the importance of mental health within the thinking about social determinants, social conditions and health, which mental health is a key part. And particularly when we think that in most countries women are more likely to be poor, or at least to have very little control of family income. They're more likely to experience violence or other forms of coercion. And they're less likely to have access to things outside the home that could be protected, like education, like paid employment outside the home. And that, as we were saying a moment ago, that capacity to make decisions on their own behalf or on behalf of their children or others in the family. And also to have a meaningful decision-making role in the community. Many of us know that women, whatever type of work they're engaged in, whatever level of seniority or whatever type of work they're doing, women are less likely to have the opportunity to express their views, to be listened to, and to take the final decision. I think many of us would understand what that means. You say something, you just don't hear it, but they'll hear it later. So, again, a pause for any comment or question, and then we'll move on to the next section about what it means to promote mental health. Many of you working in education, you working in family welfare, so social workers. I'll go back. So turning again to this Commission on Global Mental Health and Sustainable Development, it was said a lot earlier. One of the best books about mental health that you've come across is Professor Sartorius' book called Fighting for Mental Health. To tell us all and how to get hold of that. But that book says all of this. How do you promote mental health? And overlapping with that, how do you prevent mental health? And how does that fit together with treating mental health and recovery from it? Often many of these actions have several of these aims, but they are in our policy making, in our thinking, they're separate but related. So how do we improve mental health? Most of that work is done through other sectors like education. So this commission made that point. It also made the point that there are good solutions to mental health care. So even if we're in a low or scarce resource setting, there are ways to provide, sustainable ways to provide care for people early, ideally, in the course of their health, as well as through the recovery, using support of community workers. And making the point that without global action on mental health, sustainable development goals can't be met. What we mean by those. These sustainable development goals were developed 10 years ago, perhaps in a more optimistic global environment, but with the aim that, for instance, I can't remember what the end year for the SDGs is now. 20, what year are we supposed to have reached all these goals? 2030, 2025. So by 2025, we're meant to have gender equality, no poverty, zero hunger, decent work, reduced inequalities, all the other things, including peace, justice, and strong institutions, and climate action. And number 3 is health and well-being. So mental health has gone into these. There are targets on suicide reduction, reduced alcohol use. This slide, which you can't read all of now, is to give you the idea of the interrelatedness of all of these things. And for health, number 3 is good health as well as good education, gender discrimination, reduced gender discrimination, better climate action. All of these things act either on the individuals in the centre, on the families and host community, or on the broader social policy level, so those ecological circles. All of them need to go together. Without people being able to act in their local communities, participate, and it's much less likelihood of making progress towards those goals. And just to put it in the context of the World Health Organization's mental health plan, which was renewed to run until 2030 last year. But the goals include, 4 goals include implementing strategies for promotion and prevention. So there's governance of mental health services, providing a range of community-based and responsive mental health social care settings, and information systems, evidence and research. Setting up there are strategies for promotion and prevention. People, until recently, and sometimes even now, say, oh, but we can't even treat everybody. How can we think about prevention? Well, if we think of heart health, people would laugh at you now if you said that. People don't think twice. We need to stop smoking in the community. We need to improve diets, like public health advocacy. We need to improve patterns of exercise. And of course, we need primary care units, so we need the capacity to put sticks in people, advanced healthcare. But the two go together. And you're not going to, however, reduce rates of mental ill health in the community without acting on those social determinants of health and working with the education sector and the welfare sectors and all those others. So these are some of the goals that are there for those promotion and prevention strategies. The WHO is putting to all countries they should have at least two functioning promotion and prevention programs. Come back to what they might be, or you might like to volunteer some. The rate of suicide will be reduced by 1/3 by 2030. We'll have to ask later whether the Guyana Wellbeing Strategy, what its goal is for suicide prevention. and preparedness for emergencies and disasters is part of all of this as well. So this is being asked of every country, whatever their level of resources. Many people here would, many of you identify a functioning multi-sectoral mental health promotion program in this country. Not good to imagine that that is or would be.
This is a tough one, but I want to speak nevertheless. Alcohol consumption has been shown to be associated with many preventable deaths, preventable homicides, and in terms of health care, oral, esophageal, gastrointestinal cancers, and other pathologies that are life-threatening. Yet, in terms of prevention, we to see a label that goes on the alcohol bottle that drinking and then in excess of a certain amount, I think we should just put drinking flaming. It's like smoking, right? We fought a good, long, hard battle and won that fight with the cigarettes and showing without any question that smoking is associated with many cancers, and we won a battle in that people are aware now and have joined many programs, and cigarette consumption has declined, right? Because cigarette smoking. I would be very happy to see there's more lobbying, more policies put in place to address the problem of consumption of alcohol. In Guyana, it's high. With very few recreational outlets, most times whenever people have free time, we find ways to enjoy ourselves invariably by consuming large amounts of alcohol. I can be proven wrong, but I've seen, right?
That's an excellent example, yes.
Yes. So in terms of preventative programs to help prevent so many things, because if you, and that's multi-sectoral, because you're not only dealing with it at the healthcare level, you're dealing with it at social level, women and children, girls, boys, they suffer from the consequences of some parent, somebody who is under the influence, right? And so that's my question.
Excellent, and you've given some examples of how to do that in terms of labeling products. But there have been other ways, haven't there, dealing with that availability of alcohol. Did you say the consequences are many, including accidents? We're talking about the risk about violence in the home, maltreatment of children, and violence against women, as well as physical health. In many physical health conditions, as you mentioned, are worsened. It's a very worthwhile enterprise. What stood in the way? What stands in the way of moving on this? Why don't we don't do it in Australia? We were first with smoking prevention. Why don't we do it? I don't want to put the who else wants to comment? Why don't we do that?
Like I say, again, it's going to be coming up against big corporate people who produce, people who profit from the sale of these products that has high alcoholic content, and I guess the lack of the will of policymakers to also.
A lot of government revenue, and there are good reasons. A lot of government revenue comes from gambling as well as alcohol. So despite the social ills that may come with it, they might fund education, they might fund family welfare programs in those ways. But there have been some, when communities are determined, there have been some really major advances when a number of programs in countries like India where women have got together and said, in my village or my town, we're going to prevent the sale of alcohol after a certain hour. We're going to make sure that national laws about selling alcohol to intoxicated people are enforced, or not selling alcohol to children. And those things have demonstrated effects. So it's this combination of having national laws about availability of alcohol and local action that enforces it. Because somehow we seem to be able to make laws about the availability, but when it goes to banning certain types of alcohol or putting labels on bottles, it's much more confrontational directly with the industry. That's not being so easy.
Well, we have some time ago, there's about 50% of all mental disorders get reached by primary prevention. And some of the things that you mentioned are quite obvious examples, but there are others as well. Some of them are due to diet of the mother. We have still about 6 to 9 million children born with pregnancy because the mothers have not been given nutrition during their pregnancy. And what it does, some of the interventions are very simple. For example, children who have a minor deficit of hearing, unless it is discovered, are considered stupid, disobedient, misbehaving, etc. Very often become dropouts from school and then enter into a cycle of disadvantage which kills them in the end. So there are so many examples of primary prevention that they currently are not done. The problem is that all of these things are done by other people, not by psychiatrists, and not by the mental health service. And we have to convince others. They have never been trained how to do it. Convince the Minister of Health to do something else, or the Minister of Education. That is something that is to be done.
I think you've trained many young practitioners in how to do these things, Norman. And I think we have some medical students with us. How do we make sure that the medical students, as well as the psychiatry trainees and psychologists and social workers, are equipped to do this work? And to work and talk with others, to work and talk with young people, those people with experience.
A whole range of social skills which are currently completely absent from medical education, from nursing education. Nursing gets more than doctors about. Doctors are never trained how to speak, how to listen, how to be respectful. None of these things are normally included into the program, which is a great pity because they could have been so much more effective and have a much better life if they did.
Thank you.
I'm happy with the point that was made. I think, especially in third world countries like Guyana, more emphasis has to be placed on policy. I think I was looking at the program, and I'm sitting here as a male, and when we're looking at the determinants for poor mental health for women, I'm sitting there and I'm saying these are the same thing for men. There are a lot of men in their homes that can't speak or afraid of speaking, and so they get out or they behave in antisocial behaviors that triggers their wives or their women. So you have the entire house that is going through a series of mental health issues. For me, I'm thinking that there need to be an overall of the entire construct in addressing poor mental health with women, and as well as so that it can benefit men. In that it can start from a developmental standpoint, where our parents are taught how to culture children, especially male, how to be expressive, how to be responsive, how to treat women, how to conduct yourself, how to speak, and all these sort of things, so that they can be a normal growth for both gender. It's very, to me, sabotaging to address women's mental health, but you allow men to run wild by not addressing the issues that are affecting them.
Yeah, I think it's important to address women's mental health, but the solutions need to include men. As you say, there's a great deal of overlap. There's big power differential, by and large. You say it's not universal, I agree with you. But you make an excellent point, and I think if we had alcohol policies that control points of scale, and so on, and we had social and emotional learning in schools, the development of social skills in schools, as well as the whole school approach to more respectful relationships and a better school climate, we would have improved relationships among young people and in families. And that's been a program recommended by the WHO for the last 3 or more years. So we could, in Guyana, we could develop community-led programs of alcohol availability, look at introducing, there are programs in many countries, including my own, on whole school programs and social and emotional learning that could be adopted or adapted. There are 2 already. Learning, making sure that children are assessed for hearing and eyesight, as Norman has said, and making sure that antenatal programs provide iodine for women where they need it for. These are things that are going to be introduced by other sectors. They don't cost those sectors any additional money. Any additional costs they are offset by better educational or better health outcomes in other ways. So we need to be advocates as well as direct actors. So good, I think with the expertise or the creativity in this room, we could change mental health for women and men in the So I just moved quickly through this part, but this is just for those of you that are aware of the work of Dr. Marasek and Haggerty in 1994, I think it was produced the first book on reducing risk of mental health through the National Academies of Medicine in the USA. They introduced this half cartwheel that's become quite famous in the field, with prevention on the left, treatment and maintenance or recovery. And they talk about universal selected and indicated. I think if we go back to your public health textbooks, and promotion in their 2019 version. And this is a recent publication came out just before the pandemic. It's fostering healthy mental, emotional, and behavioural development in children and youth. This gives a wonderful set of, very good set, evidence-based set of national and community programs across these sectors. Whether it be education, arts, culture and music, sports promotion, family violence, and urban planning, companies affect the mental health issue, which obviously its valued benefits, as well as reduce the risk of mental health. I'm just wondering here, is it? I just wanted to show you this one. We talked before about the complex interactions of the different causes of mental health or mental health. And this particular publication, I thought, something that you can't study properly without being able to flash it up first. Just as these individual, all of these systems in neuroscience are being studied now. Think about the nervous system, the neural circuits, the microbiome, the interaction between the nutritional and neural components of our physiology, the endocrine system, and the hormones. And immune system, all of these have been studied individually, like as part of the possible causation of particular conditions. But in fact, they are all of these conditions and the networks that underpin the neural nervous system tied up with our experience, whether there's violence in the home or a stimulating, nurturing environment. In another type of, an important type of health promoting program is providing infant stimulation. The UN systems introduced learning about mothers who are involved in famine situations and refeeding. Along with that, they encourage infant stimulation. That's not so the individual experiences are built in both psychological and social benefits. So individuals and the community and beyond that, national policies, as you were saying, policies. So thinking about social policies and community, that most countries, actually Guyana may have signed the Convention on the Rights of Women and the Rights of Children. Maybe they would need one on the rights of men as well, but maybe should be. But that's sort of the human rights conventions themselves. They and themselves are not enough to change the way things are done in the country. And then there are laws about gender-based violence in many countries. If someone in their family, a woman, is experiencing violence, she calls the police if they come. And maybe a law saying it's illegal to hit your spouse and harm her, to rape your wife. But when the police come, will they believe, will they lie? They certainly do in my country. And it's kind of, so the laws are there, but they need to be used. And then this type of persisting discrimination restricts women's social advancement in many place parts of the world. So we need strategies to reduce these risk factors for women's health. And I've deliberately left out mental part of it, mental health part of it. And the risk may be there for depression or anxiety, but are equally there for heart disease in particular or cancers. And we need strategies that will contribute rather longer. These kinds of considerations, there's a lot of chatter, a lot of action and work internationally as well as nationally. Here we have the UN Commission on the Status of Women and Women in Public Life, equal participation in decision making. To end violence, achieve gender equality. So what I'm saying to you is not something coming out of thin air, it's part of the international dialogue. And from San Diego, the street art exemplifies the role that women have had in social action over many decades. So, and you might read Spanish, but women are always on the front line. Women of all ages. And coming back to our young women champions, these are the young women who are active in areas that certainly impinge on mental health. And we've seen even in this conference, and I know that here in Guyana, young women as well as young men who are there to stand up and fight for the place, the respect and the action of people with lived experience, as well as the concerned community members and family members who are caring for issues. And then community development is a process that's community-led. Many of you would be familiar with probably a number of you in this room, I suspect, come from community development backgrounds. Probably take us through this more eloquently. Here we have people like me might come to Guyana. What do I know about Guyana? But you could tap into anything. I might be able to say Christine or Anna or any of the others here and find out what we need to know about alcohol, what we need to know about social and emotional healing. And then some of that will be useful in your setting, some of it may not. There may be other things that you want to do and find somebody else or there'll be other sources we can tap into jointly to work out what's best to do. So the community members are those that can be empowered or are already empowered to strengthen their own community members and help the community wisdom and knowledge is valued and it's led by the community members at every stage and guided by the principles of rights and self-determination and also collective action. So that's a busy change, as it's how most change. But participation needs health. A young woman who's held at home with a small baby or with the household chores or the plow to pull isn't available to support mental health or health or community development. But insisting on these rights, getting allies to help do this work, is a way to tackle some of the most persistent and difficult challenges for the community, whether it's maternal and child health, violence, or engaging in healthcare, in having access to healthcare that's affordable and encouraging. And considering all of these disparities become much more marked, power differentials become much more marked in emergencies, in those kind of situations living in slums, where the people who most need food supplies and support for their children are often shoved to the back of the line. So that last list was provided by UN Women, and UN Women together with WHO has developed a program for respect women. I just put this there for your reference, but actually coalition on gender-based violence, for instance, has been developed. The strategy for preventing violence against women supported by Respect Women includes that relationship, those skills for developing relationships, making sure that services are available, the types of enabling environments we're talking about in schools and public spaces and activities, preventing abuse, transforming the attitudes that underpin that are often the barriers to change. And this is an example of a community-based rehabilitation program in India, in central India and Madhya Pradesh, where a community, a non-government organisation worked with the community for leprosy elimination and in the middle of the 20th century, and to support community-based rehabilitation for women disabled by leprosy. The next condition that they dealt with polio, and this young man in white is in fact a mental health worker. He didn't go too far at school, but he had the opportunity. He's been trained by mental health team leaders to be a mental health worker. He's visiting a village with a psychiatrist and the mental health team leader. Here's the village mental health support group. And yeah, there's a man with a turban, a white turban in the middle, playing public. And his wife had severe mental illness. She had a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And then this organisation was persuaded to turn to mental health, community-based rehabilitation. It was the treatment of his wife and her return to being able to function effectively in the community. One of the keys to the whole village taking on the understanding that people who have mental health can be treated and become part of community life and family life once more. And this is paying for grants to encourage others to be there. Mental health worker is not serious up by the tree there. They are there to support the work of this group, which brings forward people that they can see as struggling with mental health problems, but it supports early intervention, as well as those that have been treated. They can be supported in taking on work and taking on community roles. So that this village supports the families who are otherwise often struggling alone, and also encourages. But there is one psychiatrist employed by that non-government organisation, covering a population of 1 million people. And they've recruited also a team of college graduates from a local college in this rural area, social work graduates, psychology graduates, and they become team leaders. And each one of those has trained some of the people in the local non-government organisation to understand the basics. And health workers in many places have done wonders in terms of hygiene, of nutrition, childbirth, and taking on mental health. They can do this in urban areas as well. The expertise of that one psychiatrist is well used. And I think, as Norman was referring to, that psychiatrist has a much more satisfying job than someone in a poor country sitting in an office having peers who have a higher education to afford to help. Much more satisfying professional job as well. And his community development in a different setting in Indonesia, in Aceh, north of Sumatra, where there had been a major disaster of a huge Indian Ocean tsunami 20 years ago. And so here's a way of training community members to be part of the development that they've chosen to make their education in community. These are an example. If you think of perinatal mental health, and there are many movements now. The US government is supporting a lot of work through a program called Momentum. There are programs in other countries and throughout Africa and some alliance networks. Concerned often with the treatment of mental ill health in women. Let's think about promotion and prevention as well. And first of all, we know it's a big problem, but even a decade ago, most people thought that perinatal depression is a problem for people in Australia. It's not a problem for people in Indonesia or Vietnam or Guyana. More now that we understand India, Guyana, Vietnam, the rates are at least double those of the rates in the US and other high-income countries. Commonly pregnant women and new mothers of all types in all types of countries. They have consequences for the health and development of the children as well as for the mothers. And some of the sources for those comments are there. A lot of the reason for this high prevalence is violence. As mentioned, violence is more common in the perinatal period than in the period of the So this is, and Jane Fisher has written, it's really essential to address emotional, physical, and sexual violence perpetrated by an intimate partner, and any strategies to reduce the risk of perinatal mental health problems in can reduce the risk of perinatal depression by protecting women from human rights abuses. Now, again, we as psychiatrists can't do that directly, but governments just might listen if we get together with the women and have a united front. When they don't listen if our peers are saying, oh, but that's not our job. And we need to get consensus among all of us in the room to go to government and say it's important for national development and better mental health that we reduce human rights abuses, protecting women from insecurity, consequences of poverty, discrimination, and depression in the home, and preventing intimate partner violence. And then inevitably depression will happen. It will happen with people who are not subject to those abuses. We know that. We're talking epidemiologically. But for anyone who develops depression, what's important is early identification and treatment, and then recovery supports is needed. And identifying exposure to violence where it's there. If someone is depressed and is there violence happening as well? Not always, of course, but frequently enough. And in terms of primary health care, it's increasing the capacity to prevent and treat, to recognise these common mental health problems. They're not only depression, they're anxiety, and they can be post-traumatic stress disorder. Those that have been exposed to that complex trauma I mentioned earlier would be particularly subject to that. And here we have these participatory approaches to health. There are some wonderful examples in cluster randomized controlled trials published in the Lancet and other journals from 20 years ago, 2004 was some of the earliest, where Anthony Costello and colleagues in Nepal had trained peer workers in villages in rural Nepal to support their peers in improved health, nutrition and childbirth. And people, including ourselves, have taken that kind of understanding to work with women in marginalised groups and support them to improve mental health, to work with their peers to improve mental health. And then equipping community workers in primary and maternal care. I think the midwives are such an important resource here. How do we equip them to be not scared of finding depression and dealing with it, but how do we equip them to be enthusiastic about recognizing depression? The WHO doesn't encourage screening because what can we do? We have to have something put in place. And you can achieve much better by giving some understanding to the workers. These are intelligent, trained workers, giving them some understanding of what they can do, recognising it with seeking support from health specialists where needed. Finishing in a moment. So, how can we contribute? What can we do in the face of all these? Talk about that. And we need to strengthen the capacity of communities to respond to mental health needs. I think we've covered a lot of that. We need to train our professionals to be ready to engage communities, to think about teamwork and systems. Link midwives and nurses to training. They manage most problems themselves, but they have continuing access to trainers. And there's mental health professionals, trained trainers in primary health care or in business leadership. In schools, a very similar situation. We work with teachers, we work with school leaders, we work with the parents and the pupils. The teachers are equipped to manage most problems themselves and have continuing access to the people of trainer. Again, the mental health professionals are ready to be there. So in fact, we invert the pyramid, the WHO pyramid of mental health care. Mental health professionals are a small group they're supporting the work of primary health care in terms of supporting the community workers and the bulk of the care for the community comes from community self-help. So to conclude, about the mental health of women, the health and mental health of girls and women are endangered by violence and discrimination. And the key to better mental health and to better treatment and mental health recovery is participation, which also deals with any other social issues. And that as mental health professionals, we need to be working with others in all of these sectors, whether it's in the health sector or in schools and as well as with policy makers and civil society. I understand in Guyana that there not yet be groups to support peer support groups for people with lived experience. And we as professionals can help encourage the government to support such groups. As with families, there's such a lot that they can do for each other with some support, like supervising support, and then to engage them in policy making, service planning and direction. Also peer support work. All of that happens in my organisation. I couldn't imagine now running a youth mental health service without the youth being a central part of it. So I'll leave you those thoughts, and I think we're almost out of time for any last comments, but we could make another minute or so for anyone. Thank you.
So thank you, Professor Herrman, for that. And now I know it was quite a mouthful of how we can play a role as a community, how we need to respond, how we need to treat women. And I don't want the men to feel left out, but we're going to also involve you in the process, and we know that it can go across the board. And so at this point, I'm going to open the floor for any questions, any thoughts, any comments that you would like to share with Professor, or anything you want to add or subtract, or anything that you're thinking you would like to just take a few minutes to have those discussions.
So, now we're talking about women's health, and then you're talking about including men. What about the other members of the gender spectrum? Do you think Guyana it's too early for Guyana to start thinking about the entire gender spectrum? Or do we focus more on the more dire need, which is caring for women's health first, and then say 20 years down the line think about the other spectrum, the other participants or members?
I think that's important. We're talking about respect, and we're talking about lack of discrimination. So in fact, on the gender spectrum. Yes. And I think it's important to add the rider that talking about women's mental health, we're not excluding mental health of other genders. In fact, they all go together. But in order to tackle something, you have to identify. And we can't be swayed by the fact that these arguments are important, but they don't. We mustn't lose sight of the power of the patriarchy, that is there throughout the world. And it's something that everybody needs respect and freedom from discrimination. Let's deal with some of the outstanding examples. And of course, the situation, the predicament, particularly in different particular countries, living with non-binary gender or with LGBTQI. These people need particular respect and legal protection as well as practical regulations.
Thank you.
I hope that was good answer. Anyone else has any questions? Going once. All right, so I don't see any hands raised, so thank you for being a good audience, and thank you for your contribution to this presentation, and thank you for being here. Thank you, Professor.